Welcome to the second half of the course. Today we're going to start talking about planning and actually how we go about figuring out the who, the where, the when, and the how of content and really starting to put a structure to it. So last time we covered the why and the what, and now we're actually moving to how we then take that why and that what and give it structure and how we choose the elements of a content campaign. So let's get started. This is definitely going to be the second half of this course. So in this video presentation, we're going to cover the who. So who's going to represent us and who's going to take care of the work when it comes to content. We're going to talk about the where. So where are we putting the content? And then also where are we actually choosing the channels that we're going to use? And I'll define what channels means in a little bit. But it's the selections of the tactics that we're going to choose. The when, so when are we releasing the content? What's the timing and how does that affect our campaign? The how, so how are we going to make the content? Where we're actually going to pull it from? And then when we answer all these questions, including the first two, the why and the what, and the other four, the who, the where, the when, and the how, the end result is something called the content brief, and I'll show you what that looks like. So let's get to it, starting with the who. So who's going to represent the brand and who's going to take care of the work? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a couple roles when it comes to content. And these aren't specifically positions, so you wouldn't always find these exact position titles when we create content, but they're more roles. So one person might take on several roles. And here they are. So the first is the content editor, and what they're really going to do is they're going to establish the consistency, the policies, the standards, and the guidelines for our content. And you can think of them as kind of an editor-in-chief of a newspaper, but this is for all of the content we're going to put out. So they're going to motivate and develop our staff. They're going to facilitate strategic planning. And like I said, they're going to set those guidelines, those editorial guidelines like tone, style, voice. And they're going to oversee the development of our content and our editorial calendar, which I'll get to, which is basically a schedule of the content that we're going to produce. Another role is the content creator and the content producers. And they produce compelling content. So they can be writers, they can be videographers, they could be something even like a graphics design lead who is creating things like infographics. What they're going to do is they're going to develop all of the required content. So text, video, images, infographics, they're going to create and they're going to produce the content. 3 is a content curator, and what a content curator does is they're responsible for aggregating or curating content. So for instance, if we are getting quotes, if we are pulling in examples from other places, so different blogs, videos that people have made that we want to put on our website or on our online properties, somebody's got to pull all of that together. But when they also pull it together, these can look like separate one-off things that aren't really based on a theme. So what a curator really needs to do, in addition to selecting different pieces of content, so say a YouTube video we might put on our blog, for instance, that somebody else has produced, they actually have to put everything together and they have to give a context and a meaning to why they've curated these things together. So that's a specific role. It's not just choosing something that you think is interesting or you like. You have to give that context and meaning. Why did you choose that? Why is that important? So that's another role. Another one is something called a subject matter expert, or a SME. And these are people that have knowledge on specific topics that they want to convey to your audience. So they help you to get the content factually correct. And they're going to collaborate with the editors and the content creators and the producers on how to create that content. They're also going to review and approve the content to make sure that it is true and it's factually correct. And they can also act as content sources. So things like interviews or that expert opinion that really creates strong content. And they're also going to help review finished content and make sure that it's accurate and that the tone's correct. And then also you can have a reviewer and an approver. Now we talked about how an editor-in-chief might be a reviewer. We also just talked about how a subject matter expert might be a reviewer. But also think about people who are other stakeholders that we've identified in the past. So does the client need to take a look at it before it goes live? Who are those people that need to, you need to have specific buy-in for the pieces of content before you make them go live? Another person might be a lawyer, somebody who has to make sure that it's factually correct and that there might not be legal risk in publishing it. So those are the who. Next, we can cover the where. So where is our content going to be? Now here are some guiding questions that Colleen Jones from Klout brings up that can help shape the, this aspect. So one question could be, in what format will your content best influence attitude and action? So would a video work better than a picture, and why would it? How is it going to influence attitude and action, which are two topics that we have talked about in the past? In what channels will users best find and use your content? So where is your audience going? Does this make sense for them to be on there? If nobody you know, goes to Flickr or looks at pictures on that website, why would you put it on there? Nobody's going to see it. So you want to choose channels that your users are going to be on and that they're going to consume your content from. Otherwise, you're putting it in a black hole. And another guiding question is, where should your content be on your website and on your web pages to support attitude and action? So where would you actually place them on something like your website or your YouTube page or your Facebook page? So once you consider those, you want to take a look at the principles that we've talked about. And some of these principles, if you remember, is credibility, emotion, logic, reciprocity, which means that it's a take and a give. So if you, you know, there's a reward, whether that's intrinsic or actually some sort of prize that you give an audience for consuming your content or participating. And social proof. So the idea there that it is accurate and that, you know, say other people are taking part in this, that it resonates with other people. So we talked about these principles before, and these are principles that you want to use when you give structure. So how do you take these principles of credibility, emotion, logic that we've talked about before and actually use them in something like a video or text? And we'll get to all of those pieces in a little bit. But these are those principles that you want to use in everything where it's appropriate. So for structure, we're going to talk about three different things. We're going to talk about a channel, we're going to talk about a platform, and we're going to talk about a format. Now, these all inform each other, and this is the order that you would go about here. If you were choosing, you know, say, if you were doing an email campaign, you would choose the channel. So okay, I'm going to do something that's email-based. Platform, I'm going to use the tool. And then format, so what kind of structure you're going to give this? Is it a, you know, a text-based video, you know, a text-based email? Is this a video inside the email? Is this picture-based? So then you give it that structure, that format. So here's what a channel and a platform and a format mean. So a channel is really the place or service through which you're going to communicate with your users. So like I said, email is one, a website, text message, basically the tactic you're going to use, but it doesn't have like a location or a place yet. That actually is the platform. So that's the technology. The platform is the technology that you're going to use to build your content. So for instance, a channel would be a website. A technology you would use would be like a content management system, something like WordPress, where you'd actually use as a technology for the website. If our channel was mobile, our platform would be the iOS or Android, the actual technology that we're using. So that's the difference between a channel and a platform. They may feel the same, but the channel is basically the overall tactic that you're going to use, and the platform is the way in which you bring it about. And the format is the way in which information is presented. So audio, video, images, text, the various smaller components. So like I said, if we go back to the example of email, you're going to use a channel which is email. The platform that you would use there is, say, Constant Contact, or another GetActive is another email platform. MailChimp is another one. So the actual technology that you would use. And then the format is, okay, that's going to be comprised of images and text. And that is what our format's going to be for our email. So those are the three things. And they're in the order of how you would kind of select it and give it that structure. So one of the examples that I've talked about before is a podcast called Stuff You Should Know. They now actually have a TV show, and they're really taking off. And I thought that I would bring this back because I can use it to talk a little bit more about format. And a format is where your content comes to life, and we have many options. So you want to consider the different formats, and they work differently for different aspects of influence. So some showcase personality so that users identify with you. Others work well for presenting some sort of logical argument or evidence so that users trust you. And so what I wanted to do is take you through the website of Stuff You Should Know, and we'll talk about all the different formats that are part of that website. So like I said before, the website is this channel that we've chosen, and now we're going to talk about the specific elements or the format to give you a better idea of how you can use each of these formats. So this is their channel that they've chosen. This is their website, stuffyoushouldknow.com, and this is what it looks like. One of the elements is text, and here we have a page that is about one of the hosts. And in this case, for text, words are making a case. They're communicating an opinion, or they're giving some sort of argument. They help to convey a message, and they reinforce a theme. They convey a personality, or they tell a story, and they can inject emotion in here. In this case, this text, like I said, is about one of the hosts. Next is audio, and audio is really good for people who speak well. It does a lot of work that stories do, so they can be interactions such as interviews or friendly banter, and that's something that audio really does well on the Stuff You Should Know podcast. Like I said, it started as a podcast, and the two hosts, Josh and Chuck, are very friendly. They have a lot of personality, and they work well together. So audio is a really strong format for them. The channel, which is the website, also has a lot of images, and photos really tell stories, so they identify people, they reinforce credibility, and they show personality, which is what this picture does actually. They can tap into people's emotions, and they show sensory details, and they cause visceral reactions. And they can also instruct by showing people how to take action. In this case, this is literally instructing you, this picture. They also make use of video. So in this case, video would showcase people or personas with a lot of presence, and they tell a story. They can help you share live events, and it can really explain something. And then another piece of format is something called a data visualization, or it's better known as an infographic. And these can make points that are grounded in research, and they really invite you to visualize that point. And you see infographics a lot these days on places like Facebook. They're a way for organizations to get you to know the facts about something in a very interesting way. And they're kind of all the rage right now. So those are different content formats that the Stuff You Should Know website uses. So when would you use these different formats, and how do they help you make the case? So how do we bring this home? So let's talk about the format, how it works well with something, and the different platforms, the different technologies that you could use with this format. So we talked about audio, and they're very good with personality and stories. And some of the technologies you could use to distribute those are RSS feeds or the iTunes Store. Images work well as visual stories for sensory detail and for instruction. And Flickr and Facebook are two platforms that are very good for distributing images. As far as videos, they tell stories, they give a sense of personality. You can use it for live events or for instruction. And YouTube is one of the platforms that you can use, one of the technologies to distribute it. For data visualizations, it works well with evidence for cases. And Facebook is definitely a place where people see a lot of infographics, and then also email forwards. So if a politician wants to make a case, I've seen very recently a lot of emails from President Obama that have data visualizations so that you can see the facts come to life, and they ask you to forward that email. So we talked about format. We talked a little bit about platforms as well. So let's talk about channels. And what I'm going to lay out here are all the channels that I'm actually going to be teaching about for the next few weeks. So we'll talk about websites and static content, social media, online advertising, list building, and with that comes email writing, and online video. And you can see that each of these channels will have formats, so most of them will contain some elements that we talked about, like text, video, pictures, but they also will have different platforms. So social media would be like, a platform would be Twitter or Facebook. For online advertising, it could be the Google Advertising Network. For online video, it could be YouTube, it could be Vimeo. Those are the different platforms. And like I said, we talked about the different formats. We talked about, channels kind of come first, and they're very much this blend of strategy and tactics. So what I'm going to be doing is showing you these channels as we go on, and then from that, what are the platforms that are available to you, and how you would actually go about formatting them. So we'll talk about all of those elements when it comes to these channels week by week, sometimes 2 per week, as we continue on with this course. So now there's so many options, right? So how do you actually decide? How do you go, you know what, this is the best use of our time, that's the best use of our time, well, we don't want to waste our time here. Here are a couple pointers on that. The first is you want to find the best platforms to communicate your key messages. So if you're a tool manufacturer, a how-to series would make a lot of sense, right? Because you want to show them how to use it. So you could do things like infographics, you can do things like how-to videos, you could do a podcast where 2 experts are talking about how to use those tools or the best appropriate ways in which to do it. And those are different formats that you can use based on what you need to communicate. You want to decide if these formats are achievable. So they can be great ideas, but is it realistic? Can you commit to this? Can you do a weekly video series if you don't have a videographer on hand? So in that case, you might actually just want to do an audio podcast because you have a computer that has a microphone. You don't have the appropriate video equipment, so that might not make sense as much as you'd want to do it. If you don't want to invest in a videographer, if you don't know how to edit a video, that would not be an achievable format. So you want to keep that in mind. And then also, very important, you want to go where your audience is. You want to think about where your users are, who they're interacting with, and what they use those channels for. And if they're not on it, you shouldn't go there because, like I said before, that'll just put your content in a black hole. You'll spend a lot of time developing good quality content that nobody's going to consume. And so you wouldn't want to do that. You want to go where your audience is always. That is really one of the most fundamental parts of it. The next question is when. So you want to get your content to the right users at the right time, so you want to think about timing. So here are some guiding questions when it comes to when. When will you create, publish, and archive your content? When will you emphasize or discuss what topics, themes, or messages appear in your content? When will you make dynamic content display? So when will you actually go and launch it? And when should users have access to certain content? So that's a sense of timing. So you actually, at that point, want to make sure that they're ready for the next piece, that you've gotten them from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 4 in an appropriate timeline so that they're ready for step 4. So 2 key principles when it comes to timing that we've talked about before is repetition. Hooks and themes, the idea of repeating it so that people believe it, they hear it more often. It's a principle of rhetoric. And the second one is the opportune moment that we've talked about. So you want to ensure that you're prepared for key moments, like a call to an action. So like I said, you're ready for step 4 when you need to be at step 4, or that you're ready for a crisis response. So how do you go about planning these? I want to give you one tool and one elaboration on that tool in order to plan it. The first is something called an editorial calendar. And an editorial calendar, which can look like this, is how you plan your content over time so that you don't repeat yourself. And also you want to lay things out in a logical and progressive manner so that content builds upon itself. And it prevents you from scrambling for content ideas. So here we have the Fast Company magazine. And they also have an online magazine, and they talk about the issue. And they talk about what the specific pieces of content are going to be in that issue so that everybody's working from the same page and so that things are spaced out in a logical and a progressive manner, like I said, and so that you don't have to go, hey, it's May, we need to get our, our issue out for June. What are we even going to talk about? You have it planned out, so you know what you need to do. So that's the editorial calendar. Traditionally, it's been used in the publications world, and you can do the same online. And here's how you could do it. This is something that I have worked on myself. I call it the digital playbook. And what I do here, and it's basically just another version of an editorial calendar to just show you how these can look differently. On the first column, it just lists everything that a digital campaign can do when it comes to this one specific area. In this case, what are our themes? Things like what are our Facebook like ads going to be for that week? What are our press releases going to be? Do we need an email out? Do we need a persuasive video? And all I would do each day I have per column, or each week or each month, is fill that in. And so each week I know exactly what I need to do for that week. I've planned out my week. I know what I need to achieve and get out the door. And so I don't have to scramble for content. I know exactly what I need to do. So that's basically just another version of an editorial calendar to show you how I go about doing this myself. The last question is how, and Colleen Jones says that planning for how is more about activities than tools, and you need to do a lot to make content happen. Here are some guiding questions. The first is, will you create some or all of your content? Do you have the right people, from writers to copy editors to photographers, videographers, to make it happen? Will these people be in-house? Will they be freelance? Will it be a combination? And who will really manage your content creation? So that is a question on how. How is the content going to be created? The second is mashing up content and data from different sources. Who is going to take care of it? So that's that that content curation thing. So how will you get the content and data and bring it together? And how will your development team help? And another question is, will you curate or repackage content from your archives, from other sources, or from users? So how will you coordinate with your editorial team's efforts? Will there be a theme or an occasion for curating or repackaging? Another question is, do you need permission to curate the content from other sources? Are you giving proper attribution for the content sources? These are all questions on how you would actually go about creating this content and getting it out on time, and applying really all of the other questions, the 5 W's that we had. At the end, you have something called a content brief, and this is really your master plan. So this summarizes your answers and it makes the journey clear, and it's the 5 W's and the H put together. And this is an example that Colleen Jones puts in her book, and it answers all of these questions. So why are you influencing a result with content? What content and what style will influence that result? Who will be the influencer? Where will you influence content? When will you influence with content? And how will you get, create, and maintain the influential content? And what this is just a small document, very concise document that is your plan. It's the 5 W's and it's the H. And you can look in Colleen Jones' book if you want to take a closer look at that. So that's video 1. In video 2, we're going to start talking about these platforms and these channels. So the first one that we're going to talk about is static content and websites. So I'll see you in that video presentation.